story, and we can get into, the details of it. But I'm always curious, what's the biggest misconception you think that's out there about the, fixing games and your entire career as an NBA ref?
Fixing games. I mean, people, some people think that I went out there and put Shaquille O'Neal to the bench or LeBron James to the bench so that some of these bets won. That's really not what happened. I picked the games based on relationships that existed between referees and players, referees and coaches, and referees and owners, and what took place in the morning meetings with the referees and what was going to be called that night and how a team was going to be put at an advantage or disadvantage.
So you're saying when you would call in a bet and be like, hey, take this side, you wouldn't then make sure that you called more fouls against the team that you bet against?
No, I knew what the crew was going to go out and do that night and how a team was going to be put at an advantage. Maybe there was an emphasis that day on Kobe Bryant going to the basket, and there was a DVD sent in last week of plays that were missed by the referees. So I knew when the league came in and said, hey, listen, there's a problem here. Phil Jackson just sent in this DVD, 25 plays, Kobe getting fouled and nobody blowing the whistle. I knew the three of us were going to go out that night, and he was going to go to the line 25 times, and they were going to win by 15.
So how often would you get special instructions like that?
During the playoffs, every game. During the regular season, there were points of emphasis that came out probably once or twice a week. But during the playoffs, you sat in a room, and they showed you tape of the previous games, and they said this was missed. The referees got poor grades because they missed this, and this, and it was always for the team that was down in the series, and we knew basically what they wanted, and we went out and concentrated on those things, and the bets just flowed through.
So for that example, you would see that, okay, Kobe's going to get a lot of calls today. You'd call your buddy and say he's going to be on the foul line. Let's take the Lakers on this one. Then you would all go in together on the Lakers, or how would that work?
Definitely. I would just tell him. I didn't actually tell him why or what was going on. I would just say in a code, which is portrayed great in the movie, certain things of talking about Johnny or Chuck, which were Tommy Martino's brothers, in regard to if we're going to take the home or the away team. And we didn't really discuss how or why I was picking a game.
Okay, so you pick a game, you tell them. When you're running up and down the court and you're reffing an NBA game, things are moving a million miles an hour. Are you the whole time thinking about this spread?
No, because we won right out of the gate so many times. In fact, there were some points where Tommy and I really didn't care if we lost because we thought we were, so many red flags would be going up because, we won so much.
Right.
Was there ever a game when afterwards you were in the locker room and you're like, shit, that was really obvious. I did some stuff that's going to jump out on the tape?
No, because, again, I wasn't doing anything that the league didn't want done.
But you never, like, in a close game when the line was getting down to it at the end, you never blew your whistle one time when it was maybe, like, borderline. That would put, for me, if I were in your position, I would absolutely, even subconsciously, call more fouls, get it closer to covering the spread for myself.
And you know what? That's a great word that you just use, subconsciously, because that's what the FBI, I wrote a book, and in the book, Personal Foul, I talked about all this, and that was one thing that he wanted in the book that subconsciously I could have affected, some of these games that way, because he was writing the forward for the book and said I told the truth at every turn. So that word that you just used was the word that Phil Scala, one of the FBI agents, said, could have happened subconsciously, which, is possible. But I can only tell you that I didn't go out there and send Kobe or Shaq or some of these big stars to the bench. I just did, within the rules what the NBA wanted to do, and I knew who was going to be put at an advantage or a disadvantage. But I will say this, there was one game where Allen Iverson threatened Steve Javie, and we felt as a staff he should have been suspended, but he was only fined $25,000. I had the next game, and the two referees and myself in the morning meeting decided that Allen Iverson, although he carries the ball all the time and it's never called, we were going to enforce that rule against him that night. And we went out in the first half, and we all each took a turn. We had a pact. We're all going to call a palming violation on him, and we did that. And I did tell, Tommy to bet against Denver that night. And Iverson came up to me during a free throw, and he said, Tim, how long is this going to go on for? I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you know what I'm talking about. And I just smirked, and he smirked, and he knew it was, he was going to have a problem for the next couple of games for what he did.
So knowing all this, like how much, and I know the NBA was always said you're a lone wolf kind of situation. It's an isolated situation. But it sounds like the way you're describing it is every night the refs are talking about how they're going to officiate the game, and every night it could be different, and every night there could be some personal vendettas. Do you think that that's true?
100%. And in fact, I don't know if you guys know the name Michael Francisi. He was a famous captain in the Colombo crime family who's now out of jail and become a preacher, has left organized crime. He's on the record as saying that 3 NBA referees in the 1990s were on his personal payroll, and none of them were named Tim Donaghy. So I wasn't the only one passing along information. Was he paying them for them? I don't know what their setup was, but I'm sure he wasn't giving them chocolate bars,
Right, right. So the other thing, you've commented at times since the scandal, since you went to prison, that like you'll be like, hey, this series is going to go 7, or this series they're going to try to extend it. Is that something that you would talk about with the refs before a playoff game? Like, hey, the league needs us to go, 6 here. We need to get this game to 6, or we need to get this game to 7. Is that something that actually, because I think what happened more than anything with this scandal is that everyone got very paranoid about every game, and the NBA had a rigged feel to it. Do you think it is rigged?
Definitely manipulated. When you talk about Dick Bavetta in 2002, I don't know if you remember the famous Lakers-Sacramento Game 6, right?
Yep.
He openly said to a lot of us that he was the NBA's go-to guy. He was put on Game 6s to make sure they went to a Game 7, and that was one of the most fucked up, games in the history of the NBA.
Yes. Yep.
And when you talk about 3 referees supposedly making so many mistakes in a conference final game, where in America can you perform at that level in your job so poorly and still go to the next level and ref in the NBA Finals and get another bonus of $20,000? If they were so bad and the league was so upset, you think that they would have not moved to the next round, but they advanced to the next round and got paid for it.
So he told you personally, or he said openly out to the public, and maybe I'm unaware of it, that he is the NBA's guy when it comes to extended series. He's admitted that?
I don't know if he's admitted it, but he said it to a lot of us, and we all talked about it and laughed. In fact, when he was refereeing that game, we knew it was going to Game 7. We joked. We would call each other on the phone and say, Bavetta's, watch him. Look what he's doing.